Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle magazine review of the Marvel Treasury special, Giant Superhero Holiday Grab Bag. And this is just a classic Christmas one. I love this, even though it actually doesn't feature that much Christmas. But still, for me at Christmas time, I remember getting it, thinking this was the best. 1974 special holiday collector's issue, 50p in the UK, obviously probably $1 or something in the US. And it's quite a size, you can see it's a really, it was quite amazing when sort of the magazines that we had in the UK, this was bigger and also of course bigger than the US ones. So this was a special that I really loved. 100 pages, and you of course got all the characters in the back, nicely done as well. So there's the stories you've got there, just you can see the list. Obviously Daredevil, Black Widow, etc. And also the Thing. Hulk, of course, a classic battle, Hulk versus the Thing, and also the Avengers turned up as well. So, but this is really about the only Christmas story. Well, the other one, of course, the Black Widow. But you've got Have Yourself Sandman Little Christmas. And I always thought that the Human Torch and Spidey, they should have done a lot more with the Marvel Team Up story. This was issue 1 of Marvel Team Up. And you've got obviously Sandman versus the Spider-Man on the beach. Probably not the best place to have a battle with Sandman, but still, why not? And of course, you've got the Human Torch there. And I just thought they were great group. That they could have done a lot more with. Maybe so they could have done like Human Torch and the Iceman sort of thing. Of course, they did that in Strange Tales. And it would have been nice if they'd had a few more. Instead, they sort of went off with ridiculous ones like Spider-Man and Thor and Spider-Man and etc, etc. Still, that's the way they did it. And you got there Spidey going along with the Human Torch there. Don't want to spoil the story, the end of the story. It's quite a nice little twist at the end. And then, of course, you've got the Daredevil story. Absolutely brilliant. I love this one. Of course, classic Wallywood against Submariner. Completely outclassed. I mean, there's no way in a million years that Daredevil could beat, unless he obviously keeps him away from water for a long enough time, but that's not going to happen. Just brilliant artwork from Wallywood, even though it has got all these standard poses that he always, like Tower Comics. I loved all those ones. And you can see the pose again when he crashes through. I think he did that quite a few times. But still, brilliant artwork. He bounces over there and battles. I'm never really certain why Submariner just didn't carry around a sort of like a little flask of water, so he could sort of splash, you know, occasionally, or a little fish that could sort of spray him with it every once in a while. Or maybe a little drone above him that could spray water down him. Wouldn't have been that difficult. But then again, it would have been like Kryptonite. You have to have a sort of a weakness for a character. But still, great little story, and that's that. Obviously, like I said, it's a 100-page one. So you had a lot of great stories. And not all of the Treasury editions, I think, were 100 pages. This one was a 100-pager. The early ones were 100 pages. But Bill Everett inker, I love that. Just absolutely, I think one of my favourites. Gene Colan, of course. And this one's nice, obviously, winter one there. Christmassy sort of one. Black Widow. And you got the famous scene there on just coming out of the shower, which is obviously well known. Many people have probably seen that. And you've got obviously Black Widow in her old there. And I don't want to spoil the story for that one. It's a very short story. Obviously that was in Amazing Adventures. I loved Amazing Adventures with the Inhumans as well as Black Widow. Brilliant. Then on to the final one, which of course is the classic Battle of the Century. The Hulk versus the Thing. Now this one, of course, Jack Kirby. G. Bell, I'm never certain, George Bell, I'm not certain, but S. Rosen for lettering as well. Never put the colouring. Who did the colouring in these things? Would have been nice to have had sort of like a listing for that. Maybe they didn't care so much about that sort of thing. Clearly not. But you've got Bruce Banner there. Of course, slightly, you can see that he's the Hulk there. And then, of course, he changes very rapidly. And you've got the Avengers, of course, slightly too. Actually, Captain America and obviously Iron Man in a slightly unusual. They didn't keep that look particularly for long, I don't think. They obviously changed a bit from that. However, the Hulk story is just great. However, you got, of course, Reed Richards here, obviously falling on the floor. I always love the cover of this one. The cover is just a brilliant one because you've got like Reed on the cover. And you think, well, hang on, he never actually was involved in the battle at this point. He was sort of just falling over his test tubes and that sort of thing. But you've got lovely, the Hulk there bashing up. That would have hurt. At the same time, it's quite weird because he never seems to melt anything or any sort of issue when he falls on things, but who knows? And he's just a kid, as he says there. He got a brilliant story. I love that with some of these buildings obviously probably were not in a great state after. Maybe the Thing and whatever, the Fantastic Four came along later, or the damage control, whatever, and they fixed the buildings to make certain that they didn't topple over. That would have made a bit of a mess. But what a great story all the same. I just love that. And then we've got the classic there. And then, of course, we're on to the final bit, which, of course, and the Thing, of course, realises he's not as great as he thought he was. I mean, obviously he is. But at the same time, the Hulk is clearly stronger. He knows he is, and you've got, of course, still that story with Reed Richards, but you've got the Avengers involved, which is really great, and the Wasp. Wasp is quite useful. Now, I always think that Sue Storm, of course, in this case, in this period, she wasn't, but, of course, Sue Storm would have easily beaten the Hulk. I mean, she can beat probably most of the characters. Her abilities are so great now. They've extended it, which is absolutely wonderful, but it's, when you see it back then, it's not really the same way. So it's Reed does get into the story a little bit. Anyway, that's just let's go to the end because don't want to spoil the story. But it is one of the classics. I think it's just definitely one of the epic, just sort of combination of the Avengers meeting the FF finally. Though probably they must have had some earlier sort of meetings before that. But it's still a great story. And then you've got the end bit there. And there's the covers, which is always quite good. You've got the Inhumans, Black Widow. I love those Amazing Avengers. The Fantastic Four, 25 and 26. And of course, Marvel Team Up, first issue of that one. Love that one. And Daredevil. Classic one, number 7. Brilliant cover with Daredevil. And that's that. An absolutely brilliant. Virtually every Christmas, I will wheel this out and have a re-look at this. And of course, any Christmas books. I've got loads of Christmas comic magazines and books, and I bring them out quite regularly to have a look over the Christmas period. They're just great. Eat a mince pie or two and maybe a couple of glasses of something along with reading one of these. I just think just wonderful. That's my, along with a couple of other Christmas books, Christmas novels as well. Lovely. And TV, of course. But this is great. Really worth checking out. You should be able to find copies of this. I think copies of these turn up in fairly brilliant condition. I think they're quite expensive, but in tatty ones like this, probably not that much. So worth checking out. I love it and totally recommended.